Chapter 16. Before October 1893, I had studied various subjects by myself in a more or less desultory manner. I read the histories of Greece, Rome, and United States. I had a French grammar in raised print, and as I already knew and as I already knew some French, I often amused myself by composing in my head short exercise, using the new words as I came across them, and ignoring rules and other technicalities as much as possible. I even tried, without aid, to master the French pronunciation, as I found all the letters and sound described in the book. Of course, this was tasking a slender power for great ends, but it gave me something to do on a rainy day, and I acquired a sufficient knowledge of French to read with pleasure La Fontaine's fables, Le Médecin Malgré Lui, and passages from Atali. I also gave considerable time to the improvement of my speech. I read aloud to Miss Sullivan and recited passages from my favorite poet, which I had committed to memory. She corrected my pronunciation and helped me to phrase it and inflect. It was not, however, until October 1893, after I had recovered from the fatigue and excitement of my visit to the World's Fair, that I began to have lessons in special subjects at fixed hours. Miss Sullivan and I were at the time in Holton, Pennsylvania, visiting the family of Mr. William Wade, my Irons, a neighbor of theirs, was a good Latin scholar. It was arranged that I should study under him. I remember him as a man of rare, sweet nature and of wide experience. He taught me Latin grammar principally, but he often helped me in arithmetic, which I found as troublesome as it was uninteresting. Mr. Ryder also read with me Tennyson in memoriam. I had read me I had read many books before, but never from a critical point of view. I learned for the first time to know an author, to recognize his style as I recognize the clasp of a friend's hand. At first, I was rather unwilling to study Latin grammar. It seemed absurd to waste time analyzing every word I came across, noun, genitive, singular, feminina, feminine, when its meaning was quite plain. I thought I might just as well describe my pet in order to note it. Ordered vertebrate, division, quadruped, class, mammalia, genus, felinus, species, cats, individual tabby. But as I got deeper into the subject, I became more interested, and the beauty of the language delighted me. I often amuse myself by reading Latin passages, picking up words I understood, and trying to make sense. I had never ceased to enjoy this pastime. There is nothing more beautiful, I think, than the evanescent, fleeting image and sentiments present by a language one is just becoming familiar with. Ideas that fleet across the mental sky, shaped and tamed by capricious fancy. Miss Sullivan sat beside me at my lesson, spelling into my hand whatever Mr. Irons said, and looking up new words for me. I was just beginning to read Caesar's Gallic word when I went to my home in Alabama. Chapter 18. Chapter 18. In the summer of 1894, in attend the meeting at Chautauqua, Chautauqua of the American Association to promote the teaching of speed to the deaf, there it was arranged that I should go to the Wright Humanson School for the Deaf in New York City. I went during October 1894, accompanied by my accompanied by accompanied by my so, accompanied by Miss Sullivan. The school was chosen specially for the purpose of obtaining the highest advantage in vocal culture and training in lip reading. In addition to my work in these subjects, I studied during the 2 years I was in the school arithmetic, physical geography, French, and German. Miss Remy, my German teacher, could use the manual alphabet, and after I had acquired a small vocabulary, we talked together in German whenever we had a chance, and a few months in could understand almost everything she said. Before the end of the first year, I read William Tell with the greatest delight. Indeed, I think I made more progress in German than in any of my other studies. I found French much more difficult. I studied it with Madame, Madame Olivier, a French lady who did not know the manual alphabet and who was obliged to give her instruction orally. I could not read her lips easily, so my progress was much slower than in German. I managed, however, to read Le Médecin Malgré Lui again. It was very amusing, but I did not like it nearly so well as William Tell. My progress in lip reading and speech was not what my teachers and I had hoped and expected would be. It was my ambition to speak like other people, and my teachers believed that this could be accomplished. But although we worked hard and faithfully, yet we did not quite reach our goal. I suppose we aimed too high, and disappointment was therefore inevitable. I still regard arithmetic as a system of pitfalls. I hung about the dangerous frontier of guess, avoiding with infinite trouble to myself and others the broad valley of reason. When I was not guessing, I was jumping at conclusion, and this fall, in addition to my dullness, aggravated my difficulties more than was right or necessary. But although this disappointment caused me great depression at times, I pursued my other studies with a flagging interest, especially, especially physical geography. It was a joy to learn the secrets of nature, how in the picturesque language of the Old Testament, the wines the winds are made to blow from the four corners of the heavens, how the vapors ascend from the ends of the earth, how rivers are cut out among the rocks, and mountains overturned by the roots, and in what ways men may overcome many forces mightier than himself. The 2 years in New York were happy ones, and I look back to them with genuine pleasure. I remember especially the walls we all took together every day in Central Park, the only part of the city that was congenial to me. I never lost a jot of my delight in this great park. I love to have it described every time I entered it, for it was beautiful, for it was beautiful in all its aspects, and these aspects were so many that it was beautiful in a different way each day of the 9 months I spent in New York. In the spring, we made excursions to various places of interest. We sailed on the Hudson River and wandered about on its green banks, of which Brian loved to sing. I liked the simple, wild grandeur of the Palisades. Among the places I visited were West Point, Tarrytown, the home of Washington Irving, where I walked through Sleeping Hollow. The teachers at the Wright Hubbardston School were always planning how they might give the pupils every advantage that those who heard enjoy, how they might make most of few tendencies and passive memories in the case of the little ones, and lead them out of the cramping circumstance in which their lives were set. Before I left New York, these bright days were darkened by the greatest sorrow that I have ever borne, except the death of my father, Mr. John P. Spaulding of Boston, died in February 1896. Only those who knew and loved him best can understand what his friendship meant to me. He who made everyone happy in a beautiful, unobtrusive way was most kind and tender to Miss Sullivan and me, so long as we felt his loving presence and knew that he took a worshipful interest in our world, fraught with so many difficulties. We could not be discouraged. His going away left a vacancy in our lives that has never been filled. Chapter 18. Chapter 18. In October 1896, I entered the Cambridge School for Young Ladies to be prepared for Radcliffe. When I was a little girl, I visited Wesley and surprised my friends by the announcement: "Someday I shall go to college, but I shall go to Harvard." When asked why I would not go to Wesley, I replied that there were only girls there. The thought of going to college took root in my heart and became an earnest desire. which impelled me to enter into competition for a degree with seeing and hearing girls in the face of the strong oppositions of many true and white friends. When I left New York, the idea had become a fixed purpose, and it was decided that I should go to Cambridge. This was the nearest approach I could get to Harvard and to the fulfillment of my childish declaration. In the Cambridge School, the plan was to have Miss Sullivan attend the class with me and interpret to me instructions given. Of course, my instructor had no experience in the teaching any but normal pupils, and my only means of conversing with them was reading their lips. My studies for the first years were English history, English literature, German, Latin, arithmetic, Latin composition, and occasional themes. Until then, I had never taken a course of study with the idea of preparing for college, but I had been well drilled in English by my in English by Miss Sullivan, and it soon became evident to my teacher that I needed to special instruction in the subject beyond a critical study of the books prescribed by the college. I had moreover a good start in French and received 6 months instruction in Latin, but German was the subject with which I was most familiar. In spite, however, of this advantage, there were serious drawbacks to my progress. Miss Sullivan could not spell out in my hand all that the bots required, and it was very difficult to have textbooks and books in time to be of use to me. Although my friends in London and Philadelphia were willing to have the word for a while indeed, I had to copy my Latin in Braille so that I could recite with the other girls. My instructors soon became sufficiently familiar with the imperfect speed to answer my question ready and correct mistakes. I could not make notes in class or write exercise, but I wrote all my compositions and translations at home on my typewriter. Each day Miss Sullivan went to the class with me and spelled into my hand with infinite patience all that the teacher says. In study hours, she had to look up new words for me and read and reread notes and books I did not have erased print. The tedium of the tedium of that work is hard to conceive. Frau Grob, my German teacher, and Mr. Gilman, the principal, were the only teachers in the school who learned the finger alphabet to give me instruction. No one realized more fully than dear Frau Grob how slow and inadequate her spelling was. Nevertheless, in the goodness of her heart, she laboriously spelled out her instruction to me in special lesson twice a week to give Miss Sullivan a little rest, but though everybody was kind and ready to help us, there was only one hand that could turn drudgery into pleasure. The year I finished arithmetic, reviewed my Latin grammar, and read 3 chapters of Kaiser's Gallic Word. In German, I read partly with my fingers empowering Miss Sullivan assistants, Skiller, Lightborn their clock, and touched Hennes heart's race, freighted as the thought friendship desgrossen, rails, flush their scotchy head, lesson Mina von Barel, and God's aus meaning 11. I took the greatest delight in these German boats, especially Schiller wonderful lyrics, the history of the Frederick the Great's magnificent achievements at the account of God's life. I was sorry to finish thy heart's race, so full of happy greetings and charming description of vine clad hills, streams that sing and ripple in the sunshine, and wild regions sacred to tradition and legend, the great sister of a long vanished. Imaginative age descriptions such as can be given only by those to whom nature is a feeling, a love, and a appetite. Mr. Gilman instructed me part of the year in English literature. We read together as you light it, Birds and Sped of Conciliation with America, and Macaulay's Life of Samuel Johnson. Mr. Gilman's broad views of history and literature and his clever explanation made my work easier and pleasanter than it could have been had I only read notes mechanically with the necessarily brief explanations given in the classes. Burke's speech was more instructive than any other book on a political subject that I had ever read. My mind stirred with the stirring times, and the characters run with the life of the two content nation-centered seemed to move right before me, and wonder more and more, while Bert's mastery speech roared on mighty surges of eloquence, how it was that King George and his minister could hand turn a deaf ear, ear to his warning prophecy of our victory and their humiliation. Then I entered into the melancholy details of the relation in which the great statesman stood to his party and to the representatives of the people. I thought how strange it was that such precious seeds of the truth and wisdom should have fallen among the tares of ignorance and corruption. In a different way, Macaulay's Lies of Samuel Johnson was interesting. My heart went out to the lonely men who ate the bread of affliction in great strife, and yet, in the midst of toil and cruel suffering of body and soul, always had a kind word and lent a helping hand to the poor and despised. I rejoiced over all his success. I shut my eyes to his faults and wondered not that he had them, but that they had not crushed or warped his soul. But in spite of Macaulay's brilliance and his admirable faculty of making the commonplace seem fresh and picturesque, his positiveness worried me at times, and his frequent sacrifice of truth to the effort kept me in a questioning attitude, very unlike the attitude of reverence in which I had listened to the Demosthenes of Great Britain. At the Cambridge School, for the first time in my life, I enjoyed the companionship of seeing and hearing girls of my own age. I lived with several others in one of the pleasant house connect with the school, the house where Mr. Howells used to live, and we all had the advantage of, of home life. I joined them in many of their games, even blind men's buff and frolics in the snow. I took long walks with them. We discussed our studies and read aloud the things that interest us. Some of the girls learned to speak to me so that Miss Sullivan did not have to repeat the conversation. At Christmas, my mother and little sister spent the holidays with me, and Mr. Gilman quietly offered to let Mildred study in his school. So Mildred stayed with me in Cambridge, and for 6 happy months we were hardly ever apart. It makes me most happy to remember the hours we spent spelling, helping each other in study, and sharing our recreation together. I took my preliminary examination for Radcliffe from 20th of June of the 30th of June in 1997. The subjects I offered were elementary and advanced German, French, Latin, English, and Greek and Roman history, making 9 hours in all. I passed in everything and received honors in German and English. Perhaps an explanation of the method that was it used when I took my examination will not be obscure. The student was required to pass in 16 hours, 12 hours being called elementary, and 4 advanced. He had to pass 5 hours at a time to have the counting. The examination papers were given out at the 9 o'clock at Harvard and brought to Radcliffe by a special messenger. Each candidate was known, not by his name, but by a number. I was not 233, but as I had to use a typewriter, my identity could not be concealed. I was too advisable for me to have my examination in a room by myself because the noise of the typewriter might disturb of the other girls. Mr. Gilman read all the papers to me by means of the manual alphabet. Mr. Mr. Gilman read all the papers to me by means of the manual alphabet. A man was placed on guard at the door to prevent interruption. The first days I had German, Mr. Gilman sat beside me and read the paper through first, then sentence by sentence while I repeated the words aloud to make sure that I understood him perfectly. The papers were difficult, and I felt very anxious as I wrote out my answer of the typewriter. Mr. Gilman spelled to me what I had written, and I made such changes as thought necessary, and he inserted them. I wish to say heard that I have not had this advantage since in any of my examinations. In Radcliffe, no one reads the papers to me after they are written, and I have no opportunity to correct errors unless I finish before the time is up. In that case, I correct only some mistakes as I can recall in the few minutes allowed and make note of this correction at the end of my paper. If I pass with higher credit in the preliminaries than in the finals, there are two reasons. In the finals, no one read my work over to me, and in the preliminaries, I offered subjects with some of the which I was in a measure familiar, familiar before my work in the Cambridge School. For at the beginning of the year, I had passed examination in English, history, French, and German, which Mr. Gilman gave me from previous Harvard papers. Mr. Gilman sent my writing work to the examiners with a certificate that I, candidate number 233, had written the papers. All the other preliminary examinations were conducted in the same manner. None of them was too difficult as the first. I remember that the day the Latin papers was brought to us, Professor Skilling came in and informed me I had passed satisfactorily in German. This encouraged me greatly, and I sped on to the end of the ordeal with a light heart and a steady hand.